Today you're going to watch a review video on slope and slope-intercept form. You already have learned this concept. You already should know the different types of slope, and you should definitely know slope-intercept form and the components that make it up. So let's take a look at slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And these are some questions you should be asking yourself when you see that form written. What do all these variables represent? Automatically, the first two that stands out should be the slope and the y-intercept. Slope is rise over run. Y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis on a graph. You should also know the y and the x, independent and dependent variable. Second question asks, what are all the different names for the variable m? M represents slope. We also learned different names such as coefficient of x, rate of change in y over change in x, so forth and so on. So let's continue reviewing. There are 4 different types of slopes you might see. This first one, positive slope, and we've already talked about it. Positive slope is where the line is increasing. Think about a person walking on a hill. That is a person that I just drew. They're going up the incline because that's what a slope is, nothing more than a hill. They're going up. Or an airplane taking off. That is a positive slope. Negative slope, think of a person going down the hill or an airplane landing. Undefined slope is one that no one can walk on. There's no way. Undefined, usually with undefined slope, but only 0 is in the denominator. Undefined, because you cannot divide by a 0. And then the last type is 0 slope, which is something you could walk on. Just a constant rate of change, flat, level surface, 0 slope. 0 slope and undefined slope are not the same thing. Again, undefined, 0's in the denominator, which is not mathematically correct. 0 slope is just no slope. So let's continue. The slope tells us how quickly a line is rising or falling. And again, we've talked about the different names, change in y and change in x of slope, rise over run. Here's the equation, y2 minus 1, y1 over x2 minus x1. Those are all the different ways, and many more that I have not written down, ways you can see slope. So let's just do some examples to refresh your mind. Find the slope between -3, 3, and 3, -1. Well, the first thing you have to do before you can identify the slope given a graph is to plot the points. So, -3, starting at the origin, going left to 3 and up, and that is my first point. Done. Second one, starting at the origin, +3 and down -1. So I have written my points, and now I can find the slope. Rise, 1, 2, 3, 4. That goes in my numerator. Run, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I ran to the left, therefore it is negative. And I can simplify that fraction, so it's -2 over 3. And the reason I moved the negative to the numerator because that is the mathematical correct way to write a fraction that is negative. We usually do not put or keep negatives in the denominator. Also, if I look at this graph, I see that the line is going down. So that also lets me know that my slope is negative. We need to be sure to match up the direction of the line with if our slope is positive or negative. Let's do another example. Another example. Find the slope between these 2 points. 2, 7, which goes off the graph, but we can still do it. 2, 7, and 3, -1. Again, going down, so I already know my slope is negative. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that negative sign. Rise, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I run to the left 1, and I already have my negative, so I'm not going to worry about it. And that simplifies to just negative 8. Continuing our review, let's take it a step further. There are usually 3 ways you have to identify slope and y-intercept. One way is given a table. So it says to create an equation in slope-intercept form given the table below. Well, I already know slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So I have this table. What do I do? Well, I'm comfortable using the formula. So that's what I'll do to find the slope. Picking point here, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, because I use these points here. x1, x2, y2, oopsie, y1, y2, and I just use the formula. So this is 30 over 10, which simplifies to 3. That is the slope. Done with the slope. So now I need to get the y-intercept, because that is the next thing that I need to create my equation. So I'm going to go ahead and write y equals the slope, 3, x always goes after the slope. And I know, because the b represents the y-intercept, I know the y-intercept is 0, comma, b. So I can go to my table and look for where x is 0. Oh, right here, x is 0. So that means the graph crosses the y, or excuse me, the line crosses at 1. So that is my y-intercept. Again, in your table, x has to be 0 for you to identify the y-intercept. And that is my equation. Keep in mind, you can use your calculator to get this information. So if I were you, I would use this method to check your work. Next example. Create an equation in slope-intercept form given the table below. Alright, well here, I'm going to do change in y over change in x, because that is another way you can find the slope. The change in y, which is 17 minus 9, that's the change, and that's 8, over the change in x, 5 minus 1, which is 4, so divide, my slope is 2. So I can go ahead and put y equals 2x. Well, in this case, I already see there is no 0 in my table. But I do know that the slope, or the rate of change, or the coefficient of x, or the change in y divided by the change in x is 2. That means all these numbers that exist in between here are changing by 2. And this makes sense because if you look here, 20 to 21 is 1, 47 to 49 is increasing by 2, which is the slope. So if 1 is in my graph, or excuse me, my table, and I go to 0, which is before 1, that means 7 has to be here, because 7 plus 2 will give me 9. So the y-intercept is 7. And again, use your calculator to check your work. Another way you can find the slope and y-intercept is given a graph. Here, very simple, it asks for you to create an equation in slope-intercept form. First thing I'm going to do is look at this graph, and I see that the line is positive. So I know my slope is positive. Y equals, so I just need to find the slope. I'm going to start at the lowest point. I'm going to go up 2, and I'm going to run 2. And that simplifies to 1. And I know x goes with it. And then I'm identifying where the line crosses the y-axis, and it crosses at positive 2. And so my equation is y equals x plus 2. We do not need to have that 1 in front. Alright, continuing. Let's try this one. Creating a line in slope-intercept form. Here, I automatically see my line. I automatically see that it's negative, so I'm going to go ahead and put my negative with it. Starting at the lowest point, rise 1. That goes to the numerator, and I'm running 2. Let me go over here and write it. So negative 1/2 x. What is the line across the y-axis? At 1, 2, 3, positive 4. And that is the equation of the line. Alright, continuing. Here, last way, you'll have to identify the slope and y-intercept is given an equation. To me, this is the easiest one. What's the slope of the line? Very simple. The number in front of x, which is negative 3. What is the y-intercept? The number that's by itself, which is 2. Again, very simple. What is the slope? 1/6. What is the y-intercept? Positive 2. You have completed the review video. Use this video as much as you need to help you understand slope, which is a very, very important concept to understand, as you'll need it for high school.